ncIMPACT is made possible by funding from Civic Federal Credit Union. ncIMPACT is a production of UNC-TV Public Media North Carolina in association with the University of North Carolina School of Government.
The volunteer fire service across the United States is really struggling to recruit and retain volunteers.
Watch your feet.
Without a doubt, in the last 10 to 15 years, we have faced a huge shortage in this area.
Fourth floor.
When the pager goes off, you don't know what to expect until you get on scene.
The biggest thing is being able to do things to help people in our community.
Education, jobs, health, all these issues affect you. Leaders from across the state, people just like you, are working to make things better. The question is, could you do this in your community as well? I'm Anita Brown-Graham. This is ncIMPACT. The volume of calls to fire departments is going up, but the number of volunteer firefighters is going down. Many rural communities across our state are facing a crisis. Orange County is one of those communities, but they've also been recognized for their innovative recruitment and training programs. Let's look at the impact of the importance of volunteer firefighters to the rural parts of Orange County.
I taught therapeutic horseback riding for about 10 years at the North Carolina Therapeutic Horseback Riding Center. And on June 4th, 2013, I was finishing up a class and got caught in between two horses that were kicking at each other and was kicked in the head. I remember right before the accident, and then I remember waking up in the hospital unable to speak. Most people don't envision themselves ever needing to, use the services of a volunteer firefighter or EMT, and the fact that there are people out there who are willing to volunteer and do that to handle these situations, it's so important. I firmly believe that their quick response time was instrumental in my recovery and how well I did.
On the morning of April 1st, I got a phone call. This is no joke. That's the way they started it. Your apartment's on fire. Some of the firefighters said, what's in there that we can get out? And it's like, it's not your TV set. It's your photo albums and personal things, and they went into it while it was still burning on the top. And the other departments, a whole lot of departments and fire trucks there were putting water on it, and they're hand carrying things out of the apartment. How do you pay that back? I joined the club. Being able to help the community, there's just a feeling you can't explain as you're out on the interstate working a wreck and child's parents are loaded onto the ambulance and you're holding a 3-year-old. And they eventually get on and ride to the hospital with their parents, but you know you're making a difference.
Tim, put us on the ground here. What is the cost to a municipality if they can't recruit enough firefighters?
Well, it's hard to measure. A career firefighter, anywhere between $30,000 to $50,000 a year. To be a rated department, you may have to have 16 to 24 on shift, depending on the number of calls you run. So if you say you're replacing a standard volunteer fire department, you may have $300,000, $400,000 just in salary savings alone by having a volunteer department versus career.
So what do you think is the reason that there has been a decline in people wanting to be part of a volunteer fire department?
Well, there's a multitude of reasons. One is generational. What attracted me when I was 19 years old does not attract a 19-year-old today. Community people, volunteers are working outside the community, so they're not there during the day. And just the having children, the competition with gyms, memberships, recreation ball. It's just a busy time for people, and volunteering fire department takes time, and that takes a lot of people away.
So let's talk to the state's fire marshal about this issue. Just about every kindergarten class has 5 people who want to grow up to be a firefighter. So what do you think is the difference, the change in the number of people who actually are signing up to participate with volunteer fire departments?
Well, that's the key. You mentioned kindergarten. I think we need to start at an early age, get children in kindergarten and elementary school exposed to the fire service and get interested. As Tim said earlier, it's a different generation. We don't have as many family farms as we once had. We don't have as many small family businesses that we once had. And so some of these bigger corporations don't want their employees leaving to go fight fires during the workday. And it's just a challenge because there's so many other activities, travel ball, we have all types of gadgets and electronics. So we just need to think outside the box and look at new ways to recruit volunteers starting with the younger ages.
So this is a big deal. I'm teasing about kindergarten, but it's a big deal. Margaret, what does it mean if we can't recruit enough people into volunteer firefighter departments?
Well, I think it gets to Tim's point of what is it doing to those local communities? That ability to be able to respond. So, and I think Tim could speak to this, is that firefighters are doing much more than responding to fires. They're very much that first responder. So when community colleges are working and doing training, much of what they're doing with firefighters is about fire protection, but there's a whole host of training that gets into rescue and first responder activities. So all of that impacts that ability to be part of that community feels safe as to who's going to be there when they call.
Volunteers are the lifeblood of rural and small-town fire departments. But many of these fire departments will tell you it's becoming increasingly difficult to recruit and retain volunteers. Let's look at the impact of one volunteer fire department's very creative efforts to attract firefighters.
Drag it around the cone.
If you don't keep folks interested, they're not going to hang around. They'll get bored and they'll find something else to do with their time. We've been able to kind of bolster our numbers in the last 2 years, and it's actually been much better.
A lot of the people who live in this community work outside of the community. They work in Durham or Raleigh or Chapel Hill or the Research Triangle Park, and they travel from this community to those work areas, and there's not the time or the availability during the day, particularly during the day, for volunteers to respond to calls. And that's a big change, and it's affected not only this department, but fire departments everywhere.
So historically, to be a volunteer, you had to live in a really close proximity so you could get to the fire station in a timely manner. We started allowing our volunteers to sleep here. And in doing that, we had people that lived on the other side of Durham, in other counties, and from near and far. It also allowed for people that work a typical day job to spend their nights and weekends here if they so choose, instead of having to respond to a certain percentage of the call. We implemented a program, and we called it New Hope Bucks. What it was we kept track of the number of calls you ran, the number of hours you spent at the fire station, the training hours you had, and our big fundraiser we do every year is a Christmas tree sale, and the number of hours you spent selling Christmas trees. And once we figured out a formula for that, we came up with a monetary value and paid people out of the firefighters fund, which is separate from the tax money, however much money they earn, up to $500. Hopefully things continue to move forward and look up, and we don't have to make any of the tough decisions that we would have to make if things went the other way.
Margaret, a lot of time and thought has gone into how we innovate recruitment and training for a new generation of firefighters. Tell us what that looks like on the ground.
So much of what the community colleges are doing in respect to recruitment is collaborating with local agencies, those local firefighter units, and then working within those communities so that they are able to reach out to those populations of students, and particularly in non-traditional arenas, and bring those individuals onto campus and into classes and look at them to what their professional trajectory may be in that firefighter path.
Tim, what's working?
Well, the looking at non-traditional sources and looking at non-traditional methods, having academies that mirror the ethnic makeup of the county, for example, sending our volunteer fire departments out to work or job fairs at schools. Even though they're not looking for employees, you essentially are as a volunteer because they are an employee. They just do it for free.
Right.
And I think we have to mirror the ethnic makeup of our communities. We haven't done that in the past.
Mr. Fire Marshal, how confident are you that we're going to be able to recruit enough people into the profession to do the work firefighters must do?
I'm very confident in looking across the state, and I get out there every week, visit as many counties as I can each week. I have visited in the past 2 years 97 out of 100 counties. It would have been 100, but Hurricane Florence put us behind schedule a little. And we have some tremendous programs in some of our fire departments, and I can give you a number of examples, but
describe one for us, one that really excited you.
One that really excites me is up in Northampton County in northeastern North Carolina at the Gaston Volunteer Fire Department outside of Roanoke Rapids. The address is actually Roanoke Rapids now, but they just won a national award last year, and they were in competition with cadet programs from well-funded departments like Miami-Dade and Baltimore, Maryland, and they had the competition here in Warren County, and this smaller volunteer fire department, the Gaston Volunteer Fire Department, comes out winning the national award. And they have a premier cadet program where students want to come to the fire department. They want to hang out and learn things. And we see some other departments and some of our community colleges have great programs. So we have those programs, we just need more of them.
So I want to stay with this, what excites you? And we've got less than a minute left, but Tim, what have you seen that excites you?
The same, the approach of, I asked the chief one day, I said, well, why don't you have a web program or why don't you have a social media presence? And he said, we don't have anybody on our fire department today that does that. And I'm thinking, with the millennial and the Generation X, you don't have anybody on your department, so you're not recruiting the right people.
And Margaret?
So I think it follows a similar line. I think where we're seeing community colleges really be innovative in how they're delivering training and how they're working with different agencies to really figure out how to communicate in their communities and pull those individuals in.
One of the most effective ways to recruit new firefighters is to start early. There are dozens of high school fire tech programs across the state, including 2 in Orange County. Let's look at the impact of a local high school training program for the next generation of firefighters.
Cars are designed to take the impact and to save the occupant inside.
I guess I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career, and I kind of got approached that they were starting this program, and I thought it was really interesting, and I didn't really have any other electives I wanted to take, so I thought if nothing else I'd have fun during the class, but once I started taking it, I kind of realized that it's a legitimate career option, and that I liked it a lot and I could pursue it.
Get on your knees, mask up, plug in, go in the door.
The high school fire programs are excellent ways for students to make that transition into adulthood. So not only does it benefit them and give them opportunities for careers, or then also even if it's something they want to do on the side and just be a good steward in their communities where they live and give back to the communities as volunteer firefighters.
What we believe is that this will instill some interest back in the fire service from our local kids and give our local kids something to do and grow some role models and have a career track locally where they don't have to go somewhere else. They're developing some great skills, and so if they can contribute in a non-career way to public safety, whether it's a volunteer firefighter or a paramedic or EMT on the side, that's a win for us. And it's also an opportunity for us to have some kids understand what we do.
There you go.
It is pretty amazing to me that they're putting forth such effort for us to get these certifications and get qualified to do these jobs. And it really is helpful, and I think it pushes more people towards these type of careers, to emergency services careers, because when people graduate, they don't really know that. I don't think they have a direction of how to get into like the fire department or how to get into being an EMT or something like that. The classes really give you a direction towards that.
Commissioner, we've heard a bit about places in North Carolina that are really innovating. For those places that might be a little bit behind the curveball and are inspired to do more innovations, what advice do you have for them?
My advice would be go visit those fire departments that are on the cutting edge of these innovations. I'll give you an example. We talked earlier about starting at younger ages. There's a fire department up in Randolph County in Archdale, Gill Rand Fire Department. It's right near the Guilford County, Randolph County line. Every summer they have a fire camp for children ages 7 to 10. And every summer there's more applicants than they have spaces. They limit it to 50 people. Now it takes a lot of work and a lot of funding to put these fire camps on, but you think what that does to those 50 children that are going through that experience of being exposed to the fire service. Some of them have never been exposed to the fire service, and these are the ages where we must reach them. Other fire camps are ages 11 to 14. The Gaston Fire Department I mentioned, they have a summer camp for ages 11 through 14. So having people in those departments to go around to community colleges and see what's happening in community colleges and the high schools that may have junior firefighter programs, looking into Explorer programs, all of these things, there's help out there. We have help from the Office of State Fire Marshal, and I know it's an oxymoron to say we're from the government and we're here to help, but that's our
Not
message.
on this program, it's
We're
not.
here to help. We're here to help.
So Margaret, how do we connect the information to the people who need to hear it?
So I think from the community college point, we have 58 community colleges that serve 100 counties in North Carolina, and I think we leverage that to be able to say, how do we work with those colleges and those programs to ensure that that communication is happening and that outreach is occurring effectively.
And of course, most of the training happens at community colleges, but there are also some high school training programs.
Correct. The Department of Public Instruction, through their high school programs, has several high schools that have their own programs. We also have some opportunities, and we're working those conversations with DPI to allow the community colleges to collaborate with some, particularly our rural high schools, to get high school programs in fire academies with those community colleges. And so we're really working in those efforts to broaden where that reach can be.
You just mentioned the difference between rural areas and urban areas. And I wonder, Tim, if we could close with you, just giving us some sense of what it will mean to rural North Carolina if we don't recruit more people into volunteer fire departments.
Well, they're going to have to find alternate means. When I started in the fire service 45 years ago, 90% of the departments in North Carolina were volunteer. There's only 54% now that are fully volunteer. Another 37% of what we call combination, they've had to hire career firefighters. So your traditional volunteer fire departments having to put career firefighters in the station, whether it's 1, 2, or 5, to cover the load. And if rural North Carolina sees that trend as well, then somebody's going to have to come up with the money to pay, whether it's the county, ad valorem tax base, fire tax districts, or, as the commissioner well knows, fundraising by the fire department itself. You got to have personnel there to respond to fires. People leaving communities to work, they don't have that time. So you got to figure out a way to provide the firefighters without funding.
We all share many of the same challenges in our communities, so why not share the solutions as well? Each and every one of us can make a difference. That's what having an impact is all about.
ncIMPACT is made possible by funding from Civic Federal Credit Union. ncIMPACT is a production of UNC-TV Public Media North Carolina in association with the University of North Carolina School of Government.